Hello, I'm Scott Middleton, and I'm the author of Parent Talk, the 9 conversations you need to have with your aging loved one. And today I want to talk to you about one of the most difficult conversations you'll ever have with your loved ones, and that is about hospice care. So many times we want to avoid that conversation about end of life and death. And it's really not fair to the person, to our aging loved ones, but it's also not fair to us. There comes a time in everybody's life that we will be preparing for our death, and we need to be ready to talk about it, but we also need to make sure that we have shared with everyone about what our wishes will be. I tell several of my doctors that I have, I've told them that when it comes my time, I said, I want 9 months. I want you to tell me 9 months before I die that I'm going to die. And they'll always say, well, Scott, you know, we probably can't tell you that. And I said, but no, for the most part you do. If I'm getting older, if I know I have a particular disease process, give me the 9 months and say, Scott, we think it's probably 9 months. You make the decisions, because I've got things I want to do. You know, there's places that I want to see. There's people that I want to see, things that I want to do, and I want to try to take that opportunity before I get too sick. But I also have told them all that when it comes down to the end, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be in pain. I want to have had my opportunity to say my goodbyes to all my loved ones. And if that means that they keep me fairly knocked out, then that's the way I want to go. So I think it's important for all of us to make that decision about what we want to do. I remember a few years back, we had just taken over a skilled nursing facility, and I was the licensed administrator of that building. And I got a call one night from our nurse, and she said, I just wanted to let you know that Mrs. Jones is probably going to pass away tonight. And I know that we had been talking about her steady decline. I had been to her room and had prayer with her on several occasions. And so the nurse said, I'm getting ready to call her doctor, because her doctor did say he wanted me to call whenever it was the end of her life. So a little while later I get a call back, and the nurse said, the strangest thing, the doctor wants her sent to the hospital. And I said, well, that's his prerogative, and so we'll do that. So she ended up going up to the hospital. They ran every single test in the world on her. She was 93 years old, had been actively dying for the last 2 weeks, and now the doctor decided to do some aggressive treatment, and maybe in hopes of saving her life. She ended up on a ventilator in the ICU, and she died 10 days later in some of the most agonizing, painful conditions that in which someone could die. It was all a waste. It was also a very expensive. When the husband came back later and showed me his hospital bills, they were over $200,000. And you know who paid for that? Well, of course, Medicare. You and I paid for that in our taxes. At some point, we have to decide, is it time for us to stop aggressive treatment? And the way you do that is that the doctors now can tell you scientifically, statistically, what your chances of survival will be. But I've seen people who have tried to do miraculous things with a 1% chance of recovery. But what happens is many times is that as you're trying these miracle cures, it does things to your body that causes you to be sicker. For example, I had a friend of mine who had that choice. He had about 6 months left to live. The doctor went to him, he had terminal cancer, but the doctor said, I can do this chemotherapy treatment on you, and I can probably get you another 2 months of life. But he said, I promise you, during that 2 months period, or for really the next 8 months, you're going to be in and out of treatment, and you're not going to feel very well. You're going to be sick, and you're not going to really be able to be active at all. And so he chose to go on hospice, and at that point, and stop the aggressive treatment. He had about 2 really good months where he was able to do everything he wanted to do. He could get in the car, he drove around, he saw people. Then he had another 2 months. He was mostly homebound during that time, but he was able to see people as they came in to visit with him. He was on a lot of pain medicine at that time, but he would choose sometimes to go off the medicine for a few hours at a time in order for him to have quality time with his family and friends. And then the last 2 months, he basically slept. because his body was starting to shut down and he was heavily medicated for the pain, and he died of a peaceful visit, a peaceful death, was surrounded by his friends and family. The conversation has to occur, and it doesn't need to happen at the end of life. Have that conversation now with your aging loved one. Tell me what you want to have happen if you were to get cancer, if you were to be 93 and you had been sick for a long period of time. Make sure that you have those conversations so that you can help make the right decision for the end of life. Because at Agape, what we say is we want everyone to have a good death. And there is such a thing, a good death, and that's different for different individuals. I remember one time I had, back when I was a pastor, I had a parishioner who was in the hospital, and we knew he was going to be dying in a few days, and his wife had set up a vigil, and she was there. She wouldn't leave him at all. And I went by to see him and talk to him one afternoon, and I told the wife, I said, listen, I said, you need a little break. You've been at this hospital for 4 or 5 straight days. You haven't left. Go home, take a shower, take a nap, put on something different and feel a little bit better, and then come back and maybe even spend the night at home, but then come back. And the husband agreed, and he said, I think she's tired and I think she needs to go. She finally got the courage up to do that, and by the time she got home, the telephone was ringing and the hospital was telling her that her husband had died. There was no doubt in my mind that he did not want her there when he died. He didn't want her to see him die. He wanted her to be with him, and he loved her dearly. But for some people, death is a very personal experience, and they don't want to be surrounded by other folks. So everybody's different. Some people want to be surrounded by everybody. Some people want to be alone. You have to make the decision for yourself and your loved ones, and then know what to do when that time comes.